This tennis player went from this overhead to this overhead in just 17 minutes of training. And today I'm going to show you exactly how she did it so you can start crushing huge, powerful overheads by copying the same drills. Before we get right into the training, I want to point out two things about a world-class overhead. These are really critical elements. Number one, I want you to watch as Carlos hits these overheads. Occasionally he takes a little bit of a pause, not always, but when the ball is a little bit higher in the air and he's got extra time to wait for the ball, he's waiting with the racket in a particular position. Have you noticed where it is? It's in his trophy pose. What would be a trophy pose for a serve? So like on this one, he's letting the ball bounce. He's bringing his racket up first into that trophy pose position, waiting with the racket here. And then once the racket starts to fall into what would be the racket drop on a serve, everything keeps moving continuously through at that point, all the way up until the point of contact. So now that you know what I'm talking about, watch these as he brings the racket up, waits when he has a little bit of extra time, and then he drops the racket and moves through the rest of the motion in one fluid movement. The next thing I want you to notice is watch how when his racket does drop from that trophy pose position, the tip of the racket is going all the way down to waist height, just like it would on a serve. And what that's doing is generating a big, long runway with, remember, continuously moving and accelerating energy all the way through that big, long runway to generate a lot of speed and acceleration. Now that you're aware of those elements, watch my student. This is her original overhead before we started doing any training or practice together, and you'll see that her range of motion is dramatically shorter. And so there's much less space and time for her to build acceleration and speed. From her ready position, she goes up to prepare for the ball, and instead of dropping the racket down behind her into what would be like a serve racket drop position, her racket stops. It doesn't even get to shoulder height. It's stopping at head height, which means from here, we just have this tiny little runway up towards contact to build speed and actually hit the ball. What makes this even worse is because the racket tip never drops, the racket never gets into a pulling position with the butt cap going first. And so this is just like a classic in a serve context, a classic waiter tray, just open racket face, pushing motion. And so we're never going to be able to generate any significant racket head speed or hit the ball with very much power. Next, I want to show something that might be really confusing to you. Here's the same player. Watch her service motion. Look at how wildly different this looks compared to her overhead. She's checking all of the boxes that we talked about on the overhead. And notice how there's a lot of parallels and overlap between the overhead and the serve. They're both overhand throwing motions. And for this player on her serve, she is starting with the racket on edge, dropping it all the way down to waist height, pulling the racket upwards with the butt cap first. So she has none of these waiter tray tendencies on her serve at all. In fact, she has a big, long, smooth motion, and she's able to generate a lot of acceleration on her serve. Look at, she starts with the racket on edge, releases and pronates. Like, she checks all these boxes. And so this just goes to show, I wanted to show you this before we get into the overhead training, because so many players, and frankly, a lot of coaches too, try to find, shortcuts. And I respect that. Like, we don't want to make learning this game harder than it has to be, but it's not as simple as saying, oh, just hit your overhead like you're throwing a ball, or just hit your serve like you're throwing a ball. I've had baseball pitchers, college baseball pitchers, walk out into the court with me that don't have a good service motion. And so it's easy to assume, oh, if a player can do one thing, they can do another thing, but it doesn't always work that way. This player has a fantastic service motion, but basically the opposite on the overhead. So let me show you how we bridged the gap and got her to hit much more powerful, smooth overheads. The first part of her training is super, super simple. After I showed her the funny contrast between her serve and her overhead, I showed her some pro examples of overheads from world-class players. I just had her simply do some shadow swings, and within the context of being up here at the net in an overhead kind of position, as I went and filled up the ball machine, got it set up, I said, just go ahead and do some shadow swings, visualize a lob going up in the air. And here's the tough part about the overhead is we have to time this big, long throwing motion with the ball falling out of the air. So I just asked her to start connecting those dots in her head and practice going through a full serve motion with her body in a net location and just kind of picture being able to use that with a lob falling out of the air to hit an overhead. Next, this player is going to start to hit some balls out of the ball machine, the exact same feeds. She's just starting with a couple of shadow swings to remind herself the full motion that we want to use. And now watch, the ball machine is about to feed her the very first overhead with this new motion, even though it's not new for her serve. And her very first one, she crushes it. She goes through the whole motion. But now I want you to watch carefully as she continues to practice. And you're going to start to see a pause. You're going to start to see a little bit of a stop of the racket in a very different place, did you see it, than what Carlos did on his overheads. Instead of pausing and waiting for the ball in a trophy pose kind of position, she's starting to go all the way down into her racket drop. Did you see it right there? And she's halting the momentum of the racket. She's bypassing the trophy pose, going all the way down to the bottom, and then hanging out here. Kudos to this player, because this is a huge change. We've gone from a very short pushing motion to a very long pulling and snapping motion. And so she's trying to figure out the timing now with, we've probably 4 or 5x'd the length of her motion, and she's trying to figure out how to time it. And so as she's trying to do that, she's trying to fill in the gaps here when the ball is a little bit higher than she expected by pausing at the bottom. But we don't want to pause at the bottom because that shortens the runway. We want her to pause with her racket in a trophy pose. And you'll see on some of these, she's like, okay, Ian wants me to drop the racket, so I'm just going to go ahead and drop the racket. And then she's waiting and pausing down here before finally going up and swinging and hitting the ball. But we're missing the full range of motion in terms of building acceleration, building speed, building racket head speed. And she's only really using like half of it up towards the point of contact. So after a bunch of these practice ones, we stopped, and I'll show you how we remedied this hitch or this pause in the bottom of her motion. Following these drills is going to provide much more power on your overhead. And if you'd like much more power on your forehand too, make sure to go to forehandpower.com, where you can sign up for free step-by-step training, just like this lesson with this student, where I'll show you drills that you can do by yourself, just with a basket of balls on your local courts, to develop 15 miles per hour more power on your forehand ground stroke in just 15 minutes of practice. I'll show you step by step exactly how to use your body powerfully, smoothly, and athletically so you can hit the biggest forehands of your life. It's totally free, so go grab it now at forehandpower.com. So I showed the student what was happening, and now I'm having her do some shadows with a purposeful pause, like a little bit of a break with her racket up in a trophy pose position. And then once she starts dropping the racket, notice how now it's a continuous motion. She's pausing on purpose here, and we can optimize this. Eventually, we'd like the racket to be up a little bit higher so we can really maximize that range of motion, a kind of swoop back behind her and then up towards contact. So this is a little bit low, but it's way better than pausing with the racket down at her waist. So she's practicing, pausing, waiting, and in real life, the overhead's actually, honestly, I don't think it's respected nearly enough for how tricky this is, because the ball is different heights. Sometimes we've got wind, we've got different spins, we've got the sun in the way sometimes, or lights, or whatever, and we have to just kind of chill and hang out and find the right time to activate the whole rest of the motion. So she's practicing that now, starting with the racket here, and then once the racket starts falling down, smoothly and continuously dropping, and then transitioning right away up to the point of contact. And so watch the difference now as she does these hits, and you'll see varying degrees of success here, varying degrees of quality, but a lot of these are very continuous, and occasionally she's actually correctly pausing or slowing down a little bit up towards the top and then building speed through the rest of it without that hitch. One more note here, you'll notice as she practices these, she starts to kind of shank some of these, and I think that's completely normal. And she's dealing with a total timing change, totally different range of motion and swing path with the racket. Again, like to my point earlier, it's very tempting to want to believe that I should be able to just tell this player, oh, just do it like your serve. No big deal. Okay, here's a bunch of lobs, like kazam, like you've got a brand new overhead. But it's just not that simple. It's a different position, totally different timing with the ball. So she's having to rewire this, and she's doing a great job in this practice. And now it's just a matter of repetition. She's gonna get way more power by doing this, and you're gonna get way more power on your forehand by going through the training at forehandpower.com, where I'll show you step-by-step in just 15 minutes how to add 15 miles per hour of power to your forehand. It's totally free. And again, that's at forehandpower.com. Thanks so much for watching today. I hope this was super helpful, and I'll catch you in the next video.